It starts with quiet applause. A teacher beams, a parent brags, a small hand holds up a perfect score, unaware it just signed an invisible contract. "You're so smart," they say, and a belief is born. Love is earned through performance. The gifted child learns that being exceptional keeps them safe, that being ordinary is dangerous. They stop asking questions that might reveal weakness. They stop showing confusion. They start smiling through exhaustion. And the world mistakes that composure for confidence. But beneath the surface, something fragile forms, a self built entirely on achievement. When praise replaces connection, a child's worth fuses with output. Their nervous system learns that stillness is unsafe and rest feels like guilt. They don't realize it yet, but every gold star tightens the leash. Years later, this same child will struggle to rest without earning it, to love without proving it, to exist without performing. Because in their mind, love has never been unconditional. It has always been scored, graded, and measured in applause. Every gifted child grows up with a secret rulebook no one admits exists. Be excellent, stay composed, don't fail publicly. Their identity becomes a performance wrapped in politeness. Each success brings a flicker of relief, not joy, because relief means they survived another test. Psychologists call this conditional self-worth, the belief that value disappears the moment perfection slips. The child begins to fear not only failure, but rest, mediocrity, and vulnerability. They equate effort with survival, and this conditioning runs deep, even into adulthood, where the mind still whispers, "If I slow down, I'll be forgotten." This is how high achievement becomes quiet anxiety. Their mind, once curious and expansive, turns defensive and over-controlled. Every pause feels like danger, every mistake like exposure. What once was brilliance turns into a burden. They've mastered the art of never disappointing anyone, except themselves. Gifted children often grow up not just smarter, but more attuned. They notice the sigh before the argument, the tension in a parent's voice, the sadness hiding in laughter. Their sensitivity becomes a radar for other people's emotions, but not their own. Psychologists call this empathic hypervigilance. It develops when emotional intelligence outpaces emotional safety. The child learns early that reading others keeps them protected. They become small analysts, decoding moods instead of expressing feelings. As adults, this turns into overthinking, an endless loop of self-analysis, replaying conversations, searching for hidden meanings. They don't trust their emotions. They dissect them. Intellect becomes armor against vulnerability, and while the world praises their insight, few realize how lonely it feels to understand everything but yourself. This is the paradox of gifted empathy. They can name everyone's pain except their own. At first, praise feels like sunlight, warm, affirming, intoxicating, but soon it burns. Every compliment becomes another bar to reach, another identity to maintain. The words, "you're so talented," stop sounding like love and start sounding like expectation. The child's nervous system learns to anticipate performance anxiety as a normal state, a phenomenon researchers call achievement-based self-concept. They don't know how to rest because rest feels like regression. They don't know how to fail because failure feels like disappearance. By the time they're teenagers, they're not striving for joy. They're running from shame. The applause they once craved now feels suffocating. Because it's not admiration anymore, it's surveillance. They live in quiet fear that one mistake will expose them as an imposter, and that fear follows them into adulthood, disguised as perfectionism. The same voice that once cheered them on now whispers, "Don't you dare slow down." Here's the paradox no one saw coming. The more capable the child became, the less attention they received. Parents, teachers, even peers assumed they were fine, because gifted kids don't look like they need help. They don't throw tantrums or fall behind. They exceed expectations. But behind that independence often hides emotional neglect. The message absorbed is subtle yet devastating. Your feelings are less important than your performance. So the child learns to regulate alone, to cry in silence, to process confusion through logic instead of comfort. Their nervous system stops expecting care and starts equating solitude with strength. Decades later, this becomes emotional detachment. They may love deeply but struggle to feel loved. They appear calm but are internally exhausted from self-monitoring every reaction. It's not that they lack emotion. It's that they were trained to suppress it to keep admiration intact. What once looked like maturity was really survival. And survival, when prolonged, starts to look like isolation. In adulthood, the gifted child becomes the high-achieving perfectionist, the dependable one at work, the emotionally stable friend, the person who never lets anything slip. But inside, their system is cracking under invisible weight. They no longer chase goals out of inspiration, but obligation. Psychologists call this over-controlled coping, when emotional repression masquerades as discipline. Their calendar is full, their inbox spotless, their smiles rehearsed. Yet, small failures feel catastrophic. Their self-worth is a tightrope. One misstep, and they fall into shame. Burnout becomes a recurring cycle masked as productivity. Anxiety becomes a constant hum. They might even start resenting the very traits they were praised for: intelligence, responsibility, composure, because those traits, once their ticket to safety, now keep them trapped. And still, they keep going, because slowing down feels like losing identity. Healing begins with a radical act of rebellion: mediocrity. The gifted child turned adult must learn to do things badly, and let that be enough. To rest without guilt, to try without mastery, to speak without rehearsing. This is not regression, it's reprogramming. The nervous system that once equated perfection with safety must now learn safety in imperfection. Psychologists describe this as self-permission therapy, the gradual rebuilding of trust between the self and its own limits. For the gifted adult, mediocrity is medicine. It dismantles the old belief that worth is conditional. When they cook a meal that burns or paint something imperfect and still smile, something profound happens. The brain begins to separate achievement from identity. They discover that rest isn't laziness, it's recovery. Connection isn't earned, it's allowed. And sometimes the most intelligent thing a person can do is stop proving they're intelligent. Beneath all the achievement, the real gift was never the intellect. It was sensitivity, the ability to see patterns, to feel deeply, to translate complexity into meaning. That was the original spark before the pressure, before the applause. Healing means returning to that essence, but this time without performance. When the gifted adult begins to use their sensitivity for self-compassion instead of self-critique, the wound starts to close. They realize that their mind isn't broken. It's just tired of defending them. The same brilliance that once chased perfection can now build peace. And maybe that's the hidden truth. Being gifted was never about being exceptional. It was about being attuned to beauty, to emotion, to life. When that awareness turns inward, the gifted kid finally grows into someone whole. Not a prodigy, not a performer, just a person who is finally enough,